But it's time now to welcome in a man who once went by an alias. We didn't know what his real name was because he was only at DetroitKoolaid on Twitter, and he had a picture of the Kool-Aid Man. But now his name is Brandon Dent. It's great to have him on the program. Brandon, my friend, thank you so much for taking the time to join us this morning, covering the Detroit Pistons over at Woodward Sports. How are you, partner? How's life? How are things?
Hey, things are great. I am touched by this intro. We have definitely interacted for years online, but it's much better to try and make friends rather than people wondering, who is DetroitKoolaid?
Who is Detroit? Who is that masked man? I mean, you can't walk into LCA with a picture of the blue Kool-Aid Man on your credentials. They're not. I don't know if that's going to work, right? You got to drop the cell phone, the keys, and everything in a little slide thing when you go through. All right, Brandon, I got to ask you, did you stay up late last night to watch LeBron James set the scoring record?
Me and LeBron James, we have a bad history, but I did at least catch a little bit of it. I tried to, but 25 of those points in the playoffs straight against the Pistons, they kind of, it was a little tough. But congratulations to LeBron James. I won't be bitter about it.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to block that out. That is something that was always, for all of my friends that I went to school with down in Ohio, all my college friends, they would always, a bunch of Cleveland people, so it was nonstop. Every argument ended with 25 straight. Like it was. Oh. I can remember the jersey. You can remember the shots. The dude just went absurd, and it was just heartbreaking to have to watch. But luckily for us. We got to, now we got to argue about, we've gone into the eras debate today on the program. Lots of calls, texts, tweets, all that good stuff. I'm trying to set the record straight, trying to present factual evidence. People just want to throw it to the wind, but that's neither here nor there. So let's get into a little bit about what the Pistons have going on. Trade deadline is tomorrow. It's interesting, Super Bowl week. We got all the LeBron's going crazy, and we have all of these different things happening. But let's bring it back to the Pistons, and how difficult is this season to try to evaluate, knowing that the former number 1 overall pick, Cade Cunningham, he's not a part of this equation this year. So we really, how difficult is it to evaluate where this team is actually at this year? Do we just kind of take this year and throw it to the wind?
It's very difficult to determine, something that, Rod Br0's of the Detroit News and myself state often on the podcast is that Cade Cunningham is the straw that stirs the drink. And we continue to state this just based on how we saw this team play. Before there was a game plan last year, we noticed every time he's in, even though Jeremy Grant, is the individual who was supposed to be the team lead, the team just seemed to resonate better when Cade Cunningham played. As they went through the offseason and began to absolutely, lean more into this and commit to Cade Cunningham as that, franchise-defining connector, as Troy Weaver called him. He's a connector. We saw this team kind of create an identity or start to build up an identity behind Cade Cunningham. So when he got hurt, it was tough. The season started rough with a lot of different players getting hurt, largely Marvin Bagley, who was Cade Cunningham's pick-and-roll partner from last year. The Pistons went on a 10-14 stretch post-All-Star break in games that Cade Cunningham played in, which was a tremendous stretch, up over 400% winning percentage. Compared to on the season, which was under or sub 30%. So he makes a difference. I was looking forward to seeing what he was going to do this season. And Bojan Bogdanovic, he kind of echoed it in his interview with Hoops Hype as well, that the entire offense was catered and centered around Cade Cunningham. And so it gets really, really difficult to gauge where the team is and the parts around him. That's what gets difficult. But the season's not a waste. It's not a throwaway. You want to see what these young players are doing, what they're developing. There were questions that we had for Jaden Ivey as it related to, can he become a serviceable playmaker and ball handler next to Cade Cunningham? And what we've continued to also ask ourselves is can Jaden Ivey be not a Robin to Cade Cunningham's Batman? We call him the Cade Crusader. But can Jaden Ivey be a Superman to Cade Cunningham's Batman? Superstars, co-stars, not somebody who's like, okay, cool, he's a cool second option. But I mean a guy who can absolutely take the reins. And, you don't ever want to see Cade Cunningham get hurt. But this was, him getting the surgery was by design so he can be back this summer and practicing. But the blessing in disguise is seeing guys like Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren step up into these spots where, the guys ahead of them have gotten hurt and absolutely not just own their own roles, but Jaden Ivey's now playing point guard successfully. Jaden Ivey is shooting the three-point ball really, really well. You know, Jaden Ivey is doing things, playmaking that we didn't know he could do. We all had questions about it. Jalen Duren, he got drafted, and they said he's a ways off. Maybe he might have to spend some time in the G League, but look at what he's doing now. These are good developments for the Pistons. Alec Burks, Bojan Bogdanovic, these are good developments to have. Assets on this team that fit all across the cap space that other teams want. How often did we go through doing our own little, trade machines, and then we are always met with the reality that nobody else wants our players? Well, teams are calling about Sadiq Bey. Teams are calling about Alec Burks. Teams are calling about Bojan Bogdanovic. And our young guys are continuously making the all-rookie, rising stars games. So it's not a waste. It's definitely some disappointment to go around, but there's still a lot to take away from the season if this team is truly trying to restore.
And I think it's very interesting. We'll go with Jaden Ivey first, because I absolutely loved watching him at Purdue, and it was like, just wait till this guy gets to the NBA. I mean, there was a game at Michigan where he might have scored like 20 or 22, literally right in front of me, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, like, yeah, you factor this into the NBA game, more possessions, shorter shot clock, and allow a little bit more floor spacing. And this guy's athleticism, I mean, at 6'4", he could take off, he could rise up, he could get to the bucket. I'm glad that you kind of brought to light that it doesn't have to be necessarily a Batman and Robin, because Cade does really kind of feel like he's got that personality, that it can really be that co-star sort of backcourt that we haven't seen since a Chauncey and Rip here in Detroit. And prior to that, you start to look maybe at Joe D and Isaiah, where you have to have both of those guards that can play well with one another and both have strong suits. So, hey, if you're having an off night, that's okay. I could pick up the slack. I was very, very happy with the Ivy pick. And then to Jalen Duren, I mean, play him 100 minutes a night. I just want to see that guy. I just want to see him run up and down the floor. The athleticism that is there, and we saw it with Marvin Bagley, I think, last year. It was a post player the Pistons haven't had with superior athleticism in God knows how long. We saw it with Bagley, and then they added another one with Duren. I love that combination of those two.
I absolutely do. I absolutely do. Jalen Duren has absolutely excited me from this one perspective. He is a guy who's not going ahead of himself. We had a guy here in the name of Andre Drummond, who I believe was a really good player. But the contract dictated he needed to become a great player. And he could never really, really find that way to kind of play within his own game, play to his own strengths, and find a way to get better in the ways that can help the team. As the game was kind of changing by, it was about shooting threes for big men, or at least that's what he thought. With Jalen Duren, whether it's in the paint or whether it's out on the perimeter, I noticed he's very, very composed on offense, very, very mature. And the common link here, when Andre Drummond had a season, and I apologize for not having the year, but the season that Rasheed Wallace was his assistant coach, Andre Drummond, to me, had his best year. Now, I know he's had higher accoladed, higher awarded years, rewarded years, making All-NBA and whatnot towards the end of his time here with the Pistons. But that 1 year, he was absolutely aggressive. He wasn't shooting too many shots. He was trying to dunk everything. And Jalen Duren, who was his assistant coach in college, was Rasheed Wallace. And they talk about that. That I call it the school of Rasheed Wallace, that school of dunk everything. There's just a level of aggressiveness that just states you're bigger than everybody else. Go out there and use your frame to cause havoc. And don't do too much. You don't have to be the flashy offensive guy. You can see Duren go out there and just get 16 rebounds and be absolutely happy with that. Or go out there and get 10 points on just putbacks and be absolutely happy that he went out there and did his job. And that's what I absolutely love about Jalen Duren, and why I believe he's going to succeed, because he has the skill set offensively to do a few more things than we saw out of Andre Drummond. He's just, I believe, in his development, still going through, the rigmarole of things, still kind of listening to his coaches and developing the right way.
I'm a big Hamidou Diallo fan. I love his athleticism. There was a point last season where there was like some sort of rift where I think Troy Weaver had actually come down to the bench, and then everything kind of seemed to click for him after that last season. This year, it's been really strange the way that the rotation kind of works itself out. And, Brandon, I wonder what the long-term future is for Hammy, a guy that is such an athlete out there and can really rise up, can go after a rebound. He brings an explosiveness. I don't really necessarily need to see him for more than 20 minutes a game, but I would like to see him consistently find a role within this team. And I think that if the Pistons do nothing at the trade deadline, which I'm perfectly fine with if they don't do anything at the deadline, that Hammy still has a role here in this team for next season and moving forward.
I'm glad you brought him up. I really am. Early on in the season, when I noticed he was the only one really exerting a certain type of effort or energy, not the only one exerting it, but a certain type that we've kind of all identified, I was a little nervous at first to write the articles that stated, because when your team is losing, why highlight a bench player? But just the energy and everything that he was giving and the hustle, well, these are things that resonate with what we consider ourselves to be as, state of Michigan sports fans and more concentratedly Detroit sports fans. We always say it's that blue-collar work ethic. And it's interesting. To start the season, I remember the media day press conferences, we were there, and he spoke about his role this season. He said, I still feel like I'm young. I'm still pretty young, but I guess I'm a vet on this team, and they want me to start thinking that way, how I can help these guys get better, our young guys, and how we can become a better and a tighter, not just team, but family, have this bond. And so he stated it was going to be more about the hustle, more about, playing to his strengths, more about doing things that the Pistons wanted him to do when they brought him in. And so I think being given a defined set of, this is what you're going to go out and do has tremendously helped him, because you're right, he has that skill set. He has these natural abilities, gifts, and talents. It's just about making sure, like we say with Jalen Duren, you're being put in the best possible situation, and you're playing within that to achieve the most that you can achieve. And with Hammy, it's this absolute hustle, man. It stinks when you see these guys giving all that they can, like him, but the wins and the losses aren't going to be there. So guys like him and guys like Pryor, I might be going to an era that people don't quite remember, but like Junkyard Dog, Jerome Williams from the Till era, Jason Maxiell. These are guys who they deserve, and even Lindsey Hunter doing some of the down years. These are guys that deserve to be recognized irregardless of the wins and losses, because they decided to go out and play with that Detroit hustle, with that Detroit heart. And so he's a guy who, he's not going to be the heralded star. He's not going to go out there and, like you said, we probably only want to see about 20 minutes a night. But I'm glad you brought him up, because I don't think he gets enough recognition for what he's doing amidst a season like this.
Hammy hammers, that's all I want. Just rise up, go catch that ball off the heel of the rim in two hands and chuck that thing through it and bring that
Is that the
juice.
hashtag?
Yeah, I try to put it out there. I put the little hammer emoji. It hasn't caught on yet. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe one.
Look, we got you. We'll make sure we got you. We'll trademark it for you. We'll make sure we put it out there all over our airwaves, and we'll make sure people know where it started from. I like it. I like it.
And hopefully he sees it and he's like, you know what? I like hammy hammers. I'm going to hammer a couple more down this game as well. Now, should the Pistons make a move? Like, I don't think they should deal Bojan. I mean, unless the deal is too good to pass up, I really don't think so. I think that in this upcoming draft, if you add that wing scorer, if it's Wemby, you add that wing, you get Cade Cunningham basically back. I feel like they have Sadiq Bey, Beef Stew coming in off the bench with Killian Hayes. Like, I kind of feel like they have a decent young core here. Do they need to make a move at the deadline?
No. They don't need to make a move. And the reason why they don't need to make a move is because of how Troy Weaver set this team up in literally 2 to 3 years. So, they're in a position with over $60 million, about $55 to $60 million in usable cap space. And they have the capital they need during the draft season as well, like they've shown in prior drafts, Troy's first year here as well as last year, to go in and make a trade to be able to bolster this rebuild. And during the draft season is when they actually have the ability to go in and better pick out who they want, because they'll know where these draft picks are conveying. So say if they trade Bojan right now, it's traditionally or generally going to be to a contender. If it's to a contender, that draft pick might not be proper compensation for a Bojan if you don't have another deal set up in relation to this trade. So with Jeremy Grant, they traded him for a low-level first-round pick, but they knew that that pick was instantly going to go to the New York Knicks. So this deal was effectively a 3-team trade between the Pistons, Portland, and the Knicks. And it netted the Pistons a lot. And it was only because they knew Jalen Duren was going to be there. If Jalen Duren wasn't there, they don't make that trade. What if they traded Jeremy Grant before they had that deal in place? Then they get to the draft, and it's potentially a crapshoot. You don't know what these picks are going to convey. What if they drop? What if the team you traded with goes on a run, and now that pick is worse? And so I don't think that they need to make a trade. Bojan is on a very team-friendly deal. He's on a team-controllable deal. He wants to be here. He is seeing a career high in assists and his playmaking, career high in points, career high in three-point shooting, career high in free throws, and he wants to be here. He's a guy who I don't think that there'll ever be a problem if they say, hey, as these young guys are getting better, we would love to see you come off the bench for 30 minutes a night. If say, a wing player they bring in just so happens to be. So, no, they don't have to make a deal. If they do, like you said, it has to be something that absolutely moves this team forward. It can't be something lateral. It can't be something marginal. I see this noise about Cam Reddish. Why trade for another project? Why trade for another young player that you're going to have to try and develop and whatnot? So I believe Troy Weaver has his team set up very, very well, that if you want to trade, he has set his price. And if he gets that price, he will do it. And if not, he doesn't have to do anything. Remember, Bojan was brought in to complement Cade Cunningham.
Amen to that. And that guy in Bojan is a professional shooter. Brandon, my friend, I appreciate the time. We got to hit the break. We're up against it. Thank you so much for joining us. You can find Brandon on Twitter at DetroitKoolaid, and now we have a name with the face. We've unmasked that masked man. Brandon, my friend, thank you so much for the time today, partner. We greatly appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I love what you do, and stay connected.